On a cool, overcast afternoon in a quiet residential neighborhood, the streets were unusually still. The gentle hum of distant traffic and the soft rustling of leaves in a light breeze provided a calm backdrop to what would soon become an unforgettable day. In this neighborhood lived Mr. Harold Jenkins, a kind and soft-spoken elderly man known by his neighbors for his gentle smile and the warm glow of his weathered face. Despite his age, Harold had always maintained a sense of independence, routinely taking his daily walks through the tree-lined streets that he had called home for decades. Accompanying him on these walks was Brutus, a large, well-muscled pit bull with a glossy coat and deep, soulful eyes that betrayed a keen intelligence and a gentle disposition. Brutus was more than just a pet to Harold, he was a steadfast companion. A guardian whose loyalty had grown over the years through quiet walks, shared moments on park benches, and the unspoken understanding that the old man needed someone by his side. Brutus had been with Harold ever since he was adopted from a local shelter, a decision that, at the time, had seemed a small act of kindness but would eventually reveal the remarkable heroism that lay within the dog. On that fateful afternoon, Harold set out on his usual route, a familiar path winding through the neighborhood with its mix of sunlit sidewalks and dappled shadows beneath the large oak trees. The air was crisp, carrying with it a faint scent of autumn leaves and distant wood smoke. Harold strolled with a measured pace, his cane tapping gently against the pavement as he navigated the uneven sidewalks. Brutus trotted closely at his side, ever alert and scanning their surroundings with a vigilance that had been honed over many years of shared routine. As the day wore on and the sky darkened with gathering clouds, an unusual tension began to seep into the atmosphere. Neighbors noticed that the street, typically filled with gentle conversation and the soft murmur of everyday life, was now silent and watchful. It was as if an unspoken warning had descended upon the quiet block. Harold, absorbed in his thoughts and the simple rhythm of his walk, was unaware that something was amiss until a sudden, disorienting stumble disrupted his steady pace. In the span of a few heartbeats, Harold lost his footing on a slightly uneven patch of pavement, and his body collapsed onto the cold, unforgiving concrete. The fall was sudden and unexpected, a moment when time seemed to suspend itself, leaving the world in a state of anxious stillness. Brutus, who had been trotting alongside Harold, immediately sensed that his beloved owner was in distress. In that instant, the dog's instincts flared into action. Brutus began to bark, a deep, resonant sound that cut through the silence of the street like a clarion call. His barks were not frantic at first, rather, they were measured and insistent, a vocal alarm that signaled danger to anyone within earshot. As he circled around the fallen Harold, his eyes shone with a mix of concern and determination. The dog refused to leave his owner's side. He pawed at the pavement and barked louder, his barks echoing off the nearby houses and drawing the attention of those who had been outside enjoying the late afternoon. A few minutes later, when Brutus's cries grew more insistent, a passerby, a middle-aged woman walking her own small dog, noticed the commotion. Concern etched on her face. She approached cautiously, her eyes darting between the determined pit bull and the vulnerable figure lying motionless on the sidewalk. "Are you okay?" she called out, her voice laced with genuine worry as she knelt beside Harold. At that moment, Brutus's barks reached a crescendo, and he positioned himself between the woman and his owner, ensuring that Harold was not disturbed further. The woman quickly recognized the gravity of the situation and dialed emergency services as she tried to rouse Harold, who remained unconscious, his face pale and his breathing shallow. Within minutes, the sound of sirens grew louder as local paramedics and police arrived on the scene. They found Harold lying on the pavement with Brutus steadfastly hovering over him, his body still tense from the exertion of his protective vigil. Emergency responders immediately began assessing Harold's condition, checking his pulse, and administering first aid. Throughout the entire ordeal, Brutus never left his post. The pit bull continued to bark, now in a low, rhythmic tone that seemed to both alert the rescuers and comfort Harold in his vulnerable state. In subsequent interviews, the passerby who had discovered Harold recalled that she was struck by the sight of Brutus's unwavering loyalty. "I've seen dogs before, but never one that stayed so close to someone in need," she later said with a trembling voice during an interview with the local news. "Brutus just wouldn't let go. He barked and circled, making sure that help would come. It was a powerful reminder of the compassion that exists even in animals. And it changed the way I saw all dogs. Her testimony resonated with many, painting a vivid picture of a dog whose actions transcended typical pet behavior and entered the realm of quiet heroism. As paramedics carefully lifted Harold onto a stretcher and transported him to the nearby hospital, Brutus remained by his side, his eyes following every movement with an almost human intensity. The family of Harold, who were later interviewed at the hospital, expressed profound gratitude for Brutus's intervention. Harold's daughter, who had been anxiously waiting at home, described the moment when she received the call about her father's fall. "They told me that a dog had stayed with him, barking until help arrived," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "I can't even begin to express how much that meant to us. In that moment, that dog was our guardian angel." Her words captured the collective relief and awe of a community that had witnessed an act of pure, unselfish loyalty. The story of Brutus's intervention soon spread throughout the neighborhood and beyond. Local newspapers featured long-form articles detailing the event, emphasizing how the Pitbull's behavior not only saved a life but also highlighted the remarkable bond between a pet and its owner. Interviews with emergency responders revealed that Brutus's continuous barking had been instrumental in alerting neighbors and ensuring that help was not delayed. In many ways, that dog's actions bought us precious minutes. One paramedic explained during a televised segment, "When every second counts, the alertness of an animal can make all the difference in a crisis." His comments underscored the vital role that trained, loyal pets can play in safeguarding their loved ones. As the days passed, Harold's condition stabilized, and he slowly regained consciousness in the hospital. His recovery, while gradual, was marked by a deep sense of gratitude not only for the medical professionals who cared for him but also for Brutus, the loyal companion who had refused to abandon him in his moment of greatest need. In a heartfelt interview later conducted in the hospital room, Harold expressed his thanks in a soft, reflective tone. "I don't remember much of that day," he said, his eyes glistening with gratitude. "But I do remember Brutus's eyes. The way he wouldn't let me go. It's as if he knew I needed him, and he stayed until I was safe." His words, tender and sincere, painted a picture of a bond that transcended the ordinary and touched the very core of what it means to be cared for. The impact of the incident rippled throughout the community. Neighbors began to share their own stories of pet heroism, tales of dogs that had alerted them to dangers, comforted them during crises, or simply been a calming presence in times of distress. Social media was awash with hashtags such as #GuardianBrutus and #PitbullProtector. And images of the vigilant dog, captured on smartphones and shared widely online, became symbols of hope and loyalty. Community meetings were held, where residents discussed the importance of having a trusted pet by one's side and the need to appreciate the silent, vigilant guardians that often went unnoticed in the rush of everyday life. Local animal welfare organizations seized the opportunity to advocate for better support and training for pets, especially those with the potential to act as early warning systems in emergencies. Workshops were organized at community centers, where experts in animal behavior demonstrated how to recognize subtle cues in a pet's behavior, cues that might indicate distress or alertness to a dangerous situation. A dog's loyalty is one of nature's greatest gifts, an animal behaviorist explained during one workshop. Brutus's actions show that when a pet senses that something is wrong, their instinct to protect can be the catalyst for life-saving intervention. It's a lesson in love and vigilance that we should all learn from. His words, delivered with passion and expertise, resonated deeply with the attendees, many of whom were inspired to take better care of their own beloved animals. In the wake of the incident, the local media continued to follow Harold's recovery and the lasting legacy of Brutus's heroism. Follow-up segments featured interviews with Harold's family, local police, and emergency responders who recalled the night with a mix of relief and admiration. One police officer recounted how Brutus's persistent barking had been the critical factor in alerting nearby residents, ensuring that help arrived swiftly. "It's remarkable to see what one animal can do," the officer stated during a community safety meeting. "Brutus is a living testament to the power of loyalty, a true guardian whose actions remind us all that sometimes our greatest protectors come in the form of a dog with a big heart." His statement, echoed by others, served as a rallying cry for increased community awareness and mutual care. As Harold continued to recover, the Smith family, deeply moved by the incident, initiated a series of community outreach efforts. They organized local gatherings to discuss the importance of emergency preparedness and the vital role that pets could play in alerting and protecting loved ones. At one such event held in the community center, neighbors shared stories, exchanged safety tips, and even participated in demonstrations of pet alert behaviors. The event was filled with a palpable sense of unity, as people from all walks of life recognized that the vigilance of one loyal dog had ignited a spirit of collective care and resilience. We must never take for granted the little acts of courage that can save a life. A community leader declared during the event, "Brutus reminded us that true heroism is not about grand gestures, it's about the consistent, loving presence that stands by us in our darkest hours." His words, met with enthusiastic applause, underscored the profound impact that the incident had on the entire neighborhood. In the months that followed, Harold's recovery was steady, and he eventually returned home, a living testament to the life-saving power of community and the silent strength of a faithful companion. Every day, as he walked down the familiar streets of his neighborhood with Brutus by his side, he carried with him a deep sense of gratitude, a gratitude that was shared by everyone who had witnessed the dog's unwavering loyalty. Harold's story, interwoven with the heroism of Brutus, became a cherished narrative that was recounted at family gatherings, community events, and even in local schools. It served as a reminder that even in moments of profound vulnerability, hope could be found in the most unexpected places, and that the bonds between humans and their pets were among the strongest forces for good in the world. The enduring legacy of that night was celebrated annually in the neighborhood. A small memorial plaque was installed near the spot where Harold had fallen. And every year on the anniversary of the incident, neighbors gathered to honor Brutus's remarkable act of vigilance. The ceremony was simple yet deeply moving, featuring heartfelt speeches, shared moments of silence, and the collective promise to always look out for one another. "Brutus gave us a reason to believe in the goodness of the world," Harold said during one such ceremony, his voice choked with emotion. "He saved me that night, and his spirit lives on in every act of kindness we extend to one another." His words, carried by the gentle autumn breeze, resonated with all present, sealing the memory of that night as a cornerstone of community solidarity and love. Local researchers later cited the incident as a powerful example of the positive impact that pets can have on human health and well-being. Studies were conducted to examine the physiological and psychological effects of pet companionship, and findings consistently highlighted the importance of having a loyal, attentive animal in times of stress. These studies, published in academic journals and discussed at conferences, reinforced the narrative that a dog's ability to sense danger and provide comfort was not just anecdotal, it was supported by scientific evidence. The research served to further validate the experiences of Harold and countless others who had been touched by the silent heroism of a devoted pet. As spring blossomed, the community continued to thrive, buoyed by the lessons learned from that life-altering night. Harold, now healthier and more resilient than ever, became an advocate for emergency preparedness, sharing his story with local media and inspiring others to take proactive measures to safeguard their families. The Anderson family's experience, encapsulated in the enduring image of Brutus standing protectively over his owner, became a symbol of hope and the transformative power of love and loyalty, a reminder that in our darkest moments, there is always a guardian ready to stand by our side. In the aftermath of that fateful night, when the echo of protective barks had ushered the concerned neighbors into action and saved Mrs. Carter from further harm, the entire community began a slow, healing process. The once quiet street, where every shadow seemed to hold its breath, now buzzed with a renewed sense of responsibility and solidarity. In the early light of a crisp morning, as frost still clung to the edges of sidewalks, neighbors gathered on front porches to discuss the incident, their voices a mixture of relief, gratitude, and the shared determination to prevent future tragedies. Mrs. Carter, though still recovering from her sudden collapse, became a symbol of resilience. During a community meeting at the local town hall, Her gentle yet firm voice recounted that terrifying moment when she lost her balance on the cold pavement and how the unwavering presence of Rex, the loyal Pitbull, had made all the difference. In that instant, she explained, I felt the darkness closing in. But then I heard Rex's barks and saw his steadfast eyes watching over me. It was as if he was telling the world that I was not alone. Her words, heartfelt and sincere, resonated deeply with everyone present. They became a rallying cry for neighbors to look out for one another, especially the elderly, and to cherish the silent guardians in their midst. Local news outlets soon captured the story in a series of interviews and in-depth segments. Reporters detailed how Rex's alert behavior had roused Mr. Wilson, a caring neighbor returning from his evening walk, to rush to Mrs. Carter's aid. Video footage, shot by several residents with their smartphones, showed a flurry of concerned faces illuminated by the soft glow of streetlights as they gathered around the fallen woman. In these recordings, Rex could be seen pacing protectively, his barks a constant call to action that had stirred even the most complacent onlookers. One reporter, speaking with measured emotion, remarked, "What we witnessed was more than a simple act of animal instinct. It was a profound demonstration of loyalty that saved a life." Rex's actions have inspired this community to reimagine what it means to truly care for one another. As the community reflected on the incident, many discussions arose regarding the role of pets in enhancing neighborhood safety. At a series of informal gatherings at a local community center, residents shared stories of their own pets' unexpected heroism, accounts of dogs that had alerted families to dangers like carbon monoxide leaks, impending burglaries, or even other medical emergencies. These heartfelt exchanges, often interspersed with moments of laughter and tears, forged a deeper bond among the residents. In one such meeting, an elderly gentleman spoke with conviction. Rex's heroism reminds us that sometimes, our greatest protectors have 4 legs and a beating heart. It's a lesson in vigilance and compassion that we must all take to heart. Inspired by these shared experiences, local authorities began to take concrete steps toward bolstering community safety. The city council allocated funds for improved street lighting and organized workshops on emergency preparedness, where experts discussed both technological solutions and the irreplaceable value of a well-trained pet's instincts. These initiatives were supported by a surge in volunteer groups formed by residents who now saw themselves as guardians of the vulnerable. One council member emphasized during a public hearing, "This incident has shown us that the strength of our community lies in our unity. When we look out for each other, when we listen to the silent warnings of those who are always by our side, we build a safer, more caring neighborhood." In parallel, Rex's story became a source of educational inspiration in local schools. Teachers incorporated his heroic act into lessons on civic responsibility, empathy, and the value of every life. Art classes produced murals depicting a noble dog standing guard over an elderly figure, while writing contests invited students to explore themes of protection, loyalty, and community spirit. These projects not only helped the younger generation understand the importance of caring for one another but also honored the quiet heroism that had transformed their streets that chilly night. The profound impact of the incident reached beyond the immediate community as well. Social media channels were abuzz with hashtags such as #RexTheGuardian and #CommunityProtector. As people from neighboring areas and even from across the country shared their own accounts of pet heroism, online forums became hubs of discussion where residents exchanged tips on emergency preparedness, shared updates on community safety measures, and expressed gratitude for the actions of their silent protectors. One particularly moving post read, "When darkness falls and fear takes hold, our faithful companions remind us that love is the strongest shield." Such expressions of hope and unity spread like wildfire, forging a network of care that extended far beyond the quiet residential streets. Local health professionals and animal behaviorists also took interest in Rex's actions. During a televised segment on a regional news network, a respected veterinarian discussed the innate abilities of dogs to sense distress in their human companions. Dogs have a unique ability to pick up on subtle changes in our body language and even in our emotional state. The veterinarian explained, Rex's behavior was not just an instinct, it was a learned response nurtured by a deep bond with his family. His alertness likely prevented what could have been a severe medical crisis for Mrs. Carter. This expert testimony added a scientific dimension to the story, reassuring viewers that the actions of a well-trained pet were not mere chance but part of a complex, interwoven relationship between human and animal. Over the months that followed, the memory of that chilling night continued to inspire transformative changes. The Anderson neighborhood saw an increase in community events focused on mutual care, neighborhood watch groups formed, and regular safety drills were organized. Residents began to communicate more openly about their concerns, fostering a culture where every voice was valued and every act of care was celebrated. For many, the sight of Rex patrolling his usual path along the sidewalk became a reassuring reminder that, no matter how dark the night, vigilance and compassion could prevail. Meanwhile, the story of Rex and Mrs. Carter's rescue became a cornerstone for local disaster preparedness campaigns. Municipal offices distributed updated safety guidelines for elderly residents, and local libraries hosted seminars on emergency response techniques, often citing Rex's actions as a prime example of community resilience. In these settings, the story was used to illustrate that real change comes not only from technological innovation but also from the simple acts of loyalty and care that define our interactions every day. In reflective interviews recorded by local media, Mrs. Carter, now on a steady path to recovery, expressed how the incident had reshaped her outlook on life. "I was frightened and alone that night," she recalled, "but the sound of Rex's bark, his unwavering, protective bark, reminded me that I was part of a community that cared. His actions not only saved me physically but also lifted my spirit in a way I never expected." Her heartfelt words resonated deeply with viewers, many of whom found solace and encouragement in her testimony. As the seasons turned and life gradually returned to a semblance of normalcy, the legacy of that night was etched into the community's collective memory. The tale of Rex's courageous vigil became a recurring theme at local festivals, town meetings, and even in casual conversations over cups of coffee on quiet mornings. It stood as a poignant reminder that sometimes, in the midst of vulnerability and fear, the smallest acts of loyalty can spark a chain reaction of hope and unity that binds a community together. In academic circles, Rex's story was also studied as part of research into human-animal bonds and community resilience. Universities and local research centers collaborated on studies that examined how the presence of a supportive pet can reduce stress and promote a sense of security among elderly individuals. Preliminary findings suggested that communities with strong ties between residents and their pets experienced lower levels of anxiety and higher rates of successful emergency responses. These academic insights further reinforced the importance of fostering close relationships between people and their animal companions, a lesson that echoed in every heart touched by Rex's heroism. As the narrative of that transformative night continued to unfold, the Smith family, along with their neighbors and local officials, worked tirelessly to ensure that the lessons learned would not be forgotten. They implemented new measures to check on the well-being of vulnerable residents, organized regular community safety workshops, and even began to document their experiences in a series of local history projects. Through art, storytelling, and public outreach, they celebrated the resilience that had emerged from a moment of crisis, a resilience that was embodied in the steadfast loyalty of a Pitbull who had, without hesitation, stood guard over a fragile life. In the final analysis, the story of Rex's brave intervention serves as an enduring testament to the power of compassion, vigilance, and community. It is a narrative that transcends the specifics of one incident, becoming a symbol of how love and loyalty can unite people and create a safer, more supportive environment for all. Every time the residents of the neighborhood pass by the familiar path where Rex once stood watch, they are reminded of that cold, fateful night and the unwavering commitment that turned fear into hope. It is a story that, like a gentle beacon in the darkness, continues to guide the community toward a future defined by empathy, preparedness, and an unbreakable bond between humans and their animal guardians.